Well, let's talk to Professor Christian Happy, Professor of Molecular Biology and Genomics at Redeemers University. He joins us via Skype this afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the program. You know, just yesterday, I was speaking with one of our guests, Dr. Japheth, and we touched on different strains of COVID-19. Now, from that moment, I could not get it off my mind to think that there are different brands, so to speak, of the virus. I know it's something you have been exploring. So what do we know about that now?
Thank you for having me on the program. What we know about it is that there are 10 different lineages circulating in Nigeria at the moment. 10. And those lineages are coming from, multiple introduction from several areas in the world. They are from Europe, from Asia, from the US, from Saudi Arabia, from Australia, from other countries within Africa. So we've identified 10 different lineages circulating in the country at the moment.
So when you say 10 different strains, does that mean their symptoms are different, mode of transmission is different, you know, maybe the fatality rates from those strains are different? Really, what does that mean?
Well, if you read my lips properly, I said lineages, which is different from strain. Strains are, viruses of the same class, but we have different modes that we may have different modes of transmission or pathogenesis. I talked about lineages. Lineages are the same virus, but they're a little bit different. They are what we call in genetic divergence. So they are moving and evolving at different pace and evolving in different direction. So they have not formed what they call lineages yet. So they're still the same strain, but different lineages.
Right. I think it's good.
And all over the world, there are 98 lineages of the same virus overall. Okay. We haven't said that there's a new strain yet.
Right. So just to, stay on that, it's good. I'm getting schooled here by an expert. But so what is the difference really? Strain, because there are people that have said there are different strains, but you're saying now there are lineages. So what is the right information to put out there so we don't spread the wrong type of information?
We have one strain of SARS-CoV-2 in Nigeria and 10 different lineages of the same strain. A strain is a virus of the same class who can cause different ways of manifesting the disease. In this case, we have not established a new strain. We still have one single strain, but then 10 different lineages. Lineages are, they are like children from the same strain, but that are evolving, differently. Eventually, maybe over time, some could evolve to become independent strain, but we're not there yet.
Right. Thank you for clearing that up. Now, let's talk about new trends, really, in this response to COVID-19. Just yesterday, it was announced that we're opening up to international travel from August the 29th. So, there's just one strain, like you said, of COVID-19. Do you see any dangers in, opening up? What are the possibilities, the eventualities that might come up as a result of that?
Well, if we are doing testing, just like anywhere, there's the possibility that some people may bring new lineages of the viruses, from outside the country into Nigeria, as we saw clearly that the first set of lineages of the virus that came into the country were multiple introductions from different countries across the world. So it is possible that we may be having additional lineages of the virus coming into the country. And it is also possible that some people that will be positive from here, probably not showing symptoms, and then still showing negative qPCR data at the time of traveling, maybe going out of the country with lineages from Nigeria. So we should just be ready. We should just keep testing, and then that requires a lot of more testing, and then ensuring that we're on top of the game. So that is just a risk. There's a risk associated, with travels, and then that's definitely we should be ready to, to tackle those risks.
So, in terms of modality, what kind of modalities do you think should be in place? I recall the UK over the last weekend, announced that people coming in from certain countries will have to quarantine for a specific period of time. And, a lot of people were trying to rush in just to beat that. So what kind of modalities or protocols should be put in place for people coming into Nigeria, for example, now that we're opening up to international travel?
I do think that the NCDC have a regulation similar to the one that you see in the UK. I think NCDC says that people coming in have to quarantine for 14 days. I do hope that people will respect, those regulations, that they will really quarantine for those 14 days and then eventually go and then test and then ensure that they have a negative test before they get the password. I think if we all embrace the regulation by the regulators in Nigeria, through the NCDC and then the Prevention Task Force, I want to believe that we'll overcome. I think it's all about people complying.
Well, let's talk about our numbers. We recorded 417 in the past 24 hours. Now, I mean, it's not as high as it used to be. I mean, we used to have 600 and the rest. Now, I just wonder, how do you interpret these numbers? For a lot of people, they're jubilating, thinking, well, I mean, the worst is over. But for you, when you see those figures, I mean, when you analyze what we've had so far and you look into the future, what do you see?
Well, I think we have that natural tendency of declaring victory before even the battle is over. I would say that the battle is not over, and it's not over until it's over. If you look at the numbers, I don't think we are far away from what is happening all over in the UK, I mean, in the US, for instance. Let's compare the number. If you compare the numbers Africa-wide, if you look at the number of Africans that are dead, that is 25,000. If you look at the number of confirmed cases, we're about 1.2 million or 1.3 million. If you do the ratio, you realize that we're about 2%. If you come, the same applies for Nigeria. If you look at the total number of cases, we're less than 50,000 and we're almost 1,000 dead. If you do the ratio, you realize that we're probably close to 2%. If you go to the US, for instance, and then look at the number of people that they confirmed cases, they are over 4.5 million, for instance, and then you talk about number of positive cases, they're probably over 165 or 168,000. If you do that ratio, they're just about 3%. So the question is it that different? The answer is no. I think we just have to be very careful. You're hearing higher number of the case fatality rate in the US, but also compare that to the number of confirmed positive, you realize that we're not that far off though. So I think we just have to be very cautious. We have to continue, doing what we've been doing since the beginning, and then without screaming Uhuru before it's too early. Without screaming Uhuru too early. I think it is a challenge for everyone, and we should continue to work relentlessly without claiming that without claiming victory, because it's too early to claim victory over this very new coronavirus that we're all learning about every day.
Well, Prof. Happy, just before we round off on this conversation, I'd like to know briefly, what's the single most important lesson that COVID-19 has taught you?
Well, I think the single most important lesson that COVID-19 has taught me is that the world globally is very unprepared. And it's also clear that, we as human beings don't learn from our mistakes and from the past. If we have learned from Ebola, we probably would have been better prepared now. Globally, we have not learned. And I'm hoping that, from this, we'll practically sit back and then together work as a global community and then in different countries come up with a pandemic preemption system that can enable us, to prepare better for the next future pandemics. It is very important that at this point, we start working together to set up what I call an early warning system that can enable us to respond better and to preempt future pandemics.
So global cooperation for you, Professor Happy. But I'd like to thank you so much, Professor Christian Happy, Professor of Molecular Biology and Genomics. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Wuhan in China was once the world's epicenter of coronavirus, but the pictures coming from there might shock you. We'll have more on that when we return. Please stay with us.